Yeah. Okay, I think we're live.
Yep. So, hi everyone. My name is Jason Chen. I'm a professor at the Carlson School of Management. I've been in the U for 4.5 years. Prior to coming to Carlson, I received my PhD from NYU Stern School of Business. And with me today, we have Alexandro. I'll leave Alexandro to do his introduction.
Yep, my name is Alejandro Vargas. I graduated from the Carlson School of Management undergrad in 2004, majoring actually in marketing and international business, also with a failed minor in Japanese as well. I did a bit of a stint, not stint because it was a very long time in law. I went to NYU Law for law school and then practiced for 8 years. Before I went off, and now I'm working on very exciting e-commerce startup.
And we're here today because of the Give to Max program. Give to Max is Minnesota's answer to Giving Tuesday, one of the biggest fundraising days for nonprofits in the state. And so far today, we have raised $9,047.50 towards the 75,000 goal. So we definitely would need more help over here. But right now, we're not asking for donations. Today, we are here to give back to the community, sharing proven insights that can make our local businesses stronger. All right. And back to Alexandro.
So yeah, today what we're going to be talking about is covering insights in relation to consumer behavior when it comes to e-commerce. And we will be answering questions from anybody in the audience with a focus in particular to anyone that is interested in retailing online. If you want any tips on how to sell more online or anything that you want to ask about consumer behavior, we're happy to answer those questions.
All right. So if you have any questions, folks on the Facebook end, feel free to type your questions by leaving us a comment. We will be able to see those questions and we will try to answer them as much as possible. So for the first question, to just start us off, we wanted to tackle this question of how have tablets and smartphones changed the way people buy things online? So I've done a work on this area, and what we found in this study was that tablet traffic has started to overtake that of smartphones in early 2012, and it accounted for a significant part of online sales. In fact, the main sort of takeaway that we saw in this study was that the introduction of iPad tablets have led customers to increase their spending on e-commerce sites by 6 to 7% more. And if you look at the aggregate amount of money, that's a lot of sales in revenue. At the same time, it's important to sort of see what are the interrelationships between the different devices. Past work have shown that customers, they tend to seek out information before making purchases. They look for channels or mediums that allows them to do it in the easiest and the cheapest way fashion. So different mediums can complement and substitute one another in terms of the usage. So e-commerce retailers need to be savvy about this and keep updated on such trends. So in that particular study, we found that the introduction of tablets, they tend to shift consumers' shopping behavior away from the PC channel and increases their shopping activity on their phones. The fact that tablets are more portable, they have larger screens than phones, make them sort of the ideal devices to complement shopping activities on the mobile phone. In fact, the adoption of the tablet app increased browsing of URLs by 5.5% and increased the browsing on smartphones by 40%. But at the same time, it decreases PC browsing by 17%. Yep.
That's actually quite interesting. I think from our experience, we haven't done the type of research that the professor has, Professor Chan has, but what we're seeing is generally along the same lines, with the exception of not seeing so much activity on the tablet side. For us, what we're seeing in general with our sites is that both mobile and tablet combined are making up larger portion of the traffic than desktops alone. But when it comes to actual conversions, it really depends. First, it depends on the country a lot. Consumer behavior does vary a lot country to country. But I think in general, I would say that people are still more comfortable in concluding a transaction in a desktop. And I think that is changing and moving more toward like mobile and tablets. And in certain countries, in fact, especially the ones that have developed technologies that are like that have more one-click payment methods, like China companies like WeChat. It's much easier for them to actually purchase through a mobile phone. But even in the West, even in the US, we still see that traffic is coming in through mobiles. People are saving like things to their wish list on mobiles. They're sort of like making up their mind on mobile phones, but then most of the time they come in through the desktop to conclude the transaction. So a little bit of a mixed thing. I think things will continue to move toward mobile. And in fact, many companies now are designing websites just by looking first at the mobile version of the website and then sort of transposing that into the desktop. It used to be completely the other way around, but mobile environments have become so important, and UX is actually much more. It's a much more challenging thing to achieve in mobile UX that people are tend to focus now on the mobile side and then try to create a desktop site based on whatever the mobile site was.
I would agree with that. The data that we look at in the study is actually based in China. We took it. We were able to use the sort of introduction of iPad to China in 2009 and sort of base it on Alibaba sort of transaction data. So you're absolutely right. What we found over here is very specific to one country, and we know that China is on the forefront of looking at mobile technologies, phones, and also tablets.
Yep. Yeah, and that actually makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to add a little bit more there because we do look a lot into China. We sell a lot into China. People are still okay. There's certain platforms that they use more on mobile. I think for some other websites, they still tend to prefer going on a desktop. So it's almost like there's a split a bit in between like the things that they're very comfortable with, where the payment methods are also really easy. Their information is safe there, so it's really easy to do it on mobile. But for anything else, they still tend to go a little bit more toward desktop. But in general, the trend continues to be mobile in China and Southeast Asia. And like companies like, Lazada, that's backed up by Alibaba in Southeast Asia, and Shopee, that's basically through C Group, backed up by Tencent, also in Southeast Asia. They're focused entirely on mobile, and the desktop side of it is more of an afterthought for those guys as well. So it is definitely more mobile focused, I would say, than the rest of the world.
Sounds good. And let me also try to probe further into what we have found in our series of study was that, on top of the sort of medium that customers are using, we were also able to sort of find out what people are buying online through these devices. And we found that through the browsing on tablets, it led to actually more impulse buying. All right, and so a question that most of us out there might have is, what kind of products qualify as impulse buy, and why do tablets sort of encourage such behavior out there? So impulse buying is sort of a thing that occurs when consumers experience a sudden and often powerful urge to buy a product immediately. These are largely unplanned purchases that are hard to resist, and consumers, they tend to want to engage in impulse buying for the fact of immediate gratification. Right. So in our study, we classify products such as clothing, shoes, bags, food, cosmetics, movies, and music as impulse buying products. So essentially, products that incite excitement and fun for the consumer are things that tablets tend to induce a lot. Yeah. So would maybe Alexandro might want to chime in on this, based on what you guys have seen in in your line of operations.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think mobile shopping in general does increase impulse buys overall, and I think I would probably attribute that to two things. One, again, I'm just going to refer to the payment methods because that's actually a very important aspect of it, and I think for people that are watching in the U.S., you probably have experienced that with shopping, for example, on Amazon, that have like that they have the one-click buy feature which is something that many websites in the West haven't really get done very well. But in some other places, that has been very well developed. And so impulse buys are a very big thing. And the fact that you're with your phone or your tablet, wherever you are, it sort of just allows people to, whenever they have that urge, to immediately satisfy it. Before it used to be, well, you're walking, you're in a bus, you're in a train, you're not going to get your desktop out and you know. So having that smartphone or the tablet with you is just that possibility of getting that completing that urge at any moment.
And I totally agree with that. We also found something on that as well in our study, which is that the concept of micro moments are actually important in this world of multiple devices. We find that consumers, they tend to do some browsing on their phones, and this happens very interestingly at hours where people are commuting to work and commuting back to home. So they will have a browsing session on the phone, and once they get home, they want to relax, they want to sort of have a lean back experience. This is where they will take out their tablets, their iPads, and continue their shopping sort of episode that they have sort of left halfway on their mobile phones. And then they would sort of finish the transaction on the tablet, where they can sort of lean back and have a relaxing moment. So all of this sort of ties in together because we find that a lot of this shopping behavior, on top of the fact that they're buying more of these hedonic products, impulse buying, the browsing behavior that we found are actually quite casual, right? They are not going in for a specific sort of product in mind that they need to buy, and hence we find that a lot of this browsing behaviors out there, the shoppers are actually not going in for a targeted product. Yep. So
and I think that also sort of, because there was a question from the audience asking, how this consumer behavior, and as Professor Chan was saying, I think this is all really consumer behavior, and consumer behavior is very much affected by very sudden things in today's world, and that's where marketing comes in. And the marketing that right now happens, it can be at any time. You open your phone and all of a sudden you open Facebook just to browse, and you have all of a sudden an ad that urges you to buy something. You open Instagram, you like a shirt. That moment, that second, you feel like you're gonna forget what shirt that was, so you go immediately and try to buy that shirt. Now that, for example, Instagram allows to direct directly to online shops, right? So all of these things that are coming from different directions in terms of marketing are affecting consumer behavior and really kind of pushing this impulse buy thing, because consumers also right now know that those marketing bits are also fleeting moments of just a few seconds right now for people. Try to basically take advantage of that in the immediate moment.
Right. So this is, again, I agree with all the things that Alexandro has mentioned. Coming from a MIS position, the things that we found here that links back to consumer behavior is that e-commerce is very tightly linked to technology. So it's important for e-commerce website owners and marketers to understand consumer behavior well. That's one part of it. But at the same time, when doing business online, they need to have this deep appreciation of how human-computer interactions actually do work. All right. For instance, do we know how do consumers react to information that's portrayed online? All right. And there are sort of challenges over here because devices that are small, they tend to have smaller screen size. So how do we want to project, information in the most effective fashion to help, consumers make that decision? How do we capture the consumer's attention? Because online there's 101 things that consumers could actually look at. So to get them to focus on products that could help to make decisions, again, it's a hard thing to do, to focus their attention span. And finally, there's also a need, I feel, to stay updated on the kind of new technologies that come to market, right? New apps such as the one that you mentioned on Instagram, right? How do we tie a web store to new mediums like Instagram? How do we make sure that our web store front is optimized for, say, a phone or for a tablet? So all of these things are, the light just went off because I'm not moving. So all of these things come into the mix here. So e-commerce sort of owners have to be very sensitive about this. Yeah.
Yeah, in relation to that question of, it's a very difficult question to answer when it comes to the most important thing to get right in e-commerce. Simply because e-commerce tends to be highly complex. So if I were to just narrow it down to a few things, if you're doing domestic e-commerce, I think it comes down to your ability to do marketing well. I think that's a huge part of it. And included with that, I think it's the ability to provide enough, and it's for people to actually feel comfortable with what you're doing. So again, all of this is kind of like packaged into one thing.
Mm,
Marketing first, like the reach to the consumer, but then really once you have that consumer, once you have the attention to the consumer, part of like the not only the user experience, the UX, how your like website looks, but also like the support that consumer has also after they buy. So it's not only about customer acquisition, it's also just about like how long that customer will stick to your business. And that's why the concepts of lifetime value and customer acquisition costs are like basically the most important things that you should be looking at when you're running an e-commerce, which will determine whether or not you're actually going to be successful. And I would say that to add to that, just like a little bit more, because I spoke about domestic. If you are doing cross-border e-commerce, then you have to just add to that a couple of layers. One that is a technological complexity layer to that, because the technology does become more complex when you're building cross-border like commerce environments. And then the second part of that would be, and this is something that is really interesting. And if anybody is at the Carlson School listening right now, you are taught so many times from traditional businesses that are brick and mortar businesses or just other businesses that are not online that you're supposed to pay attention to what other people do around the world. But it seems like it's people making the whole mistakes that they've done with like the traditional businesses when they go online, and all of a sudden companies are forgetting that other countries have very different consumer behavior,
right.
and that you have to keep in mind, because if you're doing cross border, you have to adapt to almost every different country doing their own thing in a different way. And that's something that even the big companies in the US right now, the Fortune 500 companies that do have cross-border sites, are not doing quite well at the moment. And it's kind of a part, like a side of the business that it continues to develop, and they continue to learn, but they need to be more aggressive and in changing to fit the consumer behavior of different countries.
I would agree with this. The same old sort of advice here is to be able to exceed, customers' expectation, and to do that is to think about the value that the online store could provide. And going by that, I think we have touched upon, we need to consider what is actually value to a customer, and this actually could vary quite differently across countries. So in China, the concept of privacy is probably not a big thing. They would rather have convenience over privacy, and hence they have no issues with companies collecting data and sort of optimizing their recommendations back to the customer. But I think in Europe and possibly in the US as well, such usage of data to a very fine grained level can sometimes backfire. For instance, I see very very powerful recommendations done on the platform, right? If I were to search for things on Amazon, like say I was just searching for air filters for my car just 2 days ago. I sent my car in and they found that the filters were dirty. We need to sort of change that. And then very interestingly, just today, I turned on my Instagram. The filters that I was looking at on Amazon popped out because this company has been sort of, exchanging data and helping, to streamline the customer experience. So, this kind of, things, they do bring convenience to the consumer, but, different countries, consumer might take this very differently, right? So I think it's important to be sensitive about, the kind of value that customers place in different places. Yeah.
Going and in regards to that, I mean, that's like a key point that especially right now, is such a hot topic. You
Yeah.
cannot forget the regulatory side of that in other countries, because it's not only about consumer behavior at that point, but you're also crossing regulatory lines like, GDPR, the
Yeah.
general data protection regulation of the EU is something that is affecting the entire world right now, and the whole world will be moving toward that direction. So it's definitely something, as Professor Chan was saying, to keep in mind if you're planning on doing any sort of e-commerce that crosses borders.
All right, good. So I think finally we want to give a shout out to a couple of our donors, right? So would Alexandra want to start us off on that?
Yeah, we would like to thank, first of all, Ali Miller for their donation, and then also Chris Chams. Thank you very much for the donations. We very much appreciate it.
At the same time, we also want to thank Susan and Harry Submit for your kind donations. Definitely, this is helpful for getting us closer to our 75 grand donation goal, right? So we will want to sort of thank all the audience for watching us today. And we also have a crowdfunding page that's on Facebook. So you can keep track of that by looking at the school's crowdfunding page in the comments section. For those who would like to make a gift or follow our progress, that's a place to go to. So with that, we would sign off today's session on live interview here on Facebook. Thank you for participating. We hope that you will join us for more activities today. All right. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you.
Thank you.